It's good to see everybody back. I hope everybody had a good holiday season. And it seems like it was a long time ago now, but Henry, now we'll get started on our EA directors meeting. So I call the EA directors meeting to order. And the TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district, and today we are located on the Tecumseh-Secwepemc territory, situated with the unceded ancestral lands of Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with the Tecumseh-Secwepemc Nation and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. Are there any additions to our meeting today? Okay. Just a comment. I was lucky enough to go down and spend some time on Vancouver Island wave watching, and I got a book while I was down there. It's interesting to read the native culture that was down there. They've been there for over 4,000 years. Um, Basically, when the explorers and the people started showing up, a lot heavily in 1850 was when everything started, similar to here. And I can't believe the damage that we've done to that environment in 150 years. The whaling companies came in, they killed over 250,000 whales in 10 years. The sea otter was a valuable fur. They killed 200,000 of those, almost wiped out the population, as well as the whales. And it's interesting what we think we need to do as a civilization. And they're still suffering from a lot of the problems there. Anyway, it's just interesting to see that all of our provinces dealing with similar issues of not respecting nature. So it's something we have to keep in mind. Anyway, thanks for letting me ramble for a little bit. Okay, the first is the minutes from November 22nd to be approved. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda is a community grant writing interim projects, and who's looking after? Go ahead, Austin. Thank you.
So the report is very well put together and speaks to a lot of it, but I did just want to say to keep in mind the program's approximately half over. The reason that there's quite a lot of grant applications and a little bit more engagement in E&I is just because of the timing of the programs that fund this program right now. So the NDIT funding comes first, so we had to meet the obligations of NDIT first. That's why E&I, you see a lot more of actual applications in there, and more of the ongoing applications are in the other areas, which is funded by ETSI BC. We feel like there's actually been a pretty even engagement across a lot of the areas. Obviously, Director Onslow, because your area doesn't have quite as much, we've engaged a little differently with your area, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with the performance of the program so far, and we've seen a lot of really thankful people reach out to us. The other thing that I did want to bring up, when we look at the divide between the groups that are funded by NDIT versus the groups that are funded by ETSI BC, areas E and I have historically had a grant writer provide assistance to them. So some of the nonprofits in that area are a little bit more familiar with that process, and those groups are a little bit more what we call grant ready, in that they have financials ready to go in a format that we can submit, and they know that when we want to apply for a grant, they're going to have to provide us with a comprehensive budget, and they have their society status in good standing and ready to go. Whereas the other 8 areas, because we've not engaged with them in this capacity before, we're doing a little bit more upfront work with them to try and prepare them for the future. So just something to keep in mind as we look at our engagement with these groups. Those groups require a little bit more work on that upfront starting kind of engagement. And yeah, if there's any questions or discussion about this, if anybody's curious about Oh, the other thing I guess I'll bring up too is the ETSI grant. We don't have any confirmation that we're going to be able to apply for it. And with the way that ETSI's structure works, you usually they try and fund more of like we do it initially and then we expect you to fend for yourself going forward. So it's unlikely that we'll be able to apply for that grant again. So if we do want to continue this program, that other $25,000 that they were funded would come from tax. The overall impact spread across the 8 areas is quite minimal as an impact to residential taxpayers. I'm happy to go through the numbers with any of the specific areas if anybody's curious. But based on the amount of benefit that we see, especially in E and I, which is kind of if you want to think about what future state of this would look like for some of the other areas, E and I are probably like how we would expect it to look next year with more grant applications being put in. We do think that there's a pretty strong benefit to having the community grant writer, particularly in the wake of not being able to provide the Canada Community Building Fund to third parties anymore and being able to still reach out and engage with these groups and help them.
Lee, you have a question?
Thank you for that, and thank you for the report. And I as well agree that it's a huge benefit to our communities to have a grant writer and the availability of that writer. I'm just curious if the TNRD anticipates that MJ's hours, which was 100 hours per electoral area, if we were to divide it equally, like will those hours actually be used this year? And do we anticipate them to be used fully next year?
Great question through the chair to the committee. The hours that MJ is putting in right now, we're fully expecting them to be used. A lot of the hours that we're not necessarily seeing through engagement with groups as part of those 100 hours is like research, reaching out to some of these funder groups, getting copies of applications, going back and forth on the applications and what their requirements are. So 100% we're thinking that we're going to use all the hours, and I don't foresee there being any issues using that same amount of hours going forward either.
Director Sal?
That question was asked by Director Onslaught.
Yes. Any other questions from the board over this report? So there's recommendation. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Just off the top of my head, which is always dangerous, especially when I have not had enough coffee yet today. Wondering if this project would be eligible for nomination for the Community Excellence Awards under the Social Responsibility category for SILGA. There is a very tight deadline for that, 2 weeks, because tight deadline. But I'm thinking that this might be an excellent thing to nominate as a project for social responsibility, highlighting the Canada Community Building Fund, and this is our response to it, using some of the reports that we've had today. I think it would be a worthwhile project to nominate.
Right. Scott, have you got?
Yeah, thank you. Through to Director Roden, I think that that's a great idea. We'll follow up and see if we can pull something together within the next 2 weeks.
Go ahead, Austin.
One last thing I just wanted to add before we move on. Just a really, really huge thank you to Ainsley. She has been absolutely instrumental in making sure that this program runs effectively. And it was, we really drilled down into it, her idea from the start to do this. So huge thank you to her.
Thank you, Ainsley. I know that I think we all rely on your ability to get the different grants approved. They're made recommendation to approve through the board. Okay, we have recommendations before, so you need a motion to move the recommendation. Do we have to do it in 1 and 2 or just 1?
You beat me to it. If we could do them both separately, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so recommendation number 1, moved. Second, yes.
Could I please remind the committee members to use their microphones when they're voting, just so that the members of the public, if any, would be able to.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Move 1.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion's carried. So I need recommendation.
Move to.
I'll second it.
Second? Moved in second.
Second it.
Yeah, any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Now we get into an interesting topic, our fringe area policy discussion. And Alex, are you presenting that or how is that going to be?
Through the chair, I don't have a formal presentation, but I can certainly speak to it and maybe there could be discussion and some.
Yeah,
some
that
back
would
and
be great.
forth and Certainly. So again, I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. The board in August, I think it was Director Houghton at the time, had suggested perhaps renaming the policy to the Good Neighbor Policy. And so we brought that to the Policy Review Committee in November 19th, I believe it was, where I basically presented little bit of background and some options to basically say, is it the name that we're concerned about? Or is it the policy itself and the content, recognizing that it's been since the early 1980s? So perhaps it's time to look at it. And so the recommendation from the committee was that it be brought forward, recommending that it come to a committee of the whole meeting in 2026, went to the board and the board authorized that. So it's completely on my to-do list to bring it forward. I was thinking April. I think there's a committee of the whole in April where we would have this kind of discussion with everybody there. So as brief background, might be repetitive now, but the policy, the concept itself started in 1980 when the board created a planning committee. And they recognized that there could be this pressure of development on the fringe area of municipalities. And at the time, it was specifically mainly Kamloops that they were concerned about. That led to a policy in 1982 that basically started off by just saying that all development applications within this so-called fringe area of a municipality would be referred to the municipality for comment, just like we do when we send referrals to the Ministry of Transportation and other agencies. I guess at that time, prior to that policy, it wouldn't get sent to the municipality at all for comment. So that's how it started in 82. By 84, the board had that policy plus something they called a fringe areas policy paper with the guideline documents. And now it started to get a little bit more specific, started adding policies. And that the core of that document is what still lives today. In 2013, 2014, the board made some minor tweaks to it. And then it hasn't really been discussed since. So I think it's recognized by staff and everyone that it's healthy to have this discussion again and to see where we go from there. The term fringe area comes from urban geographers in the 1950s, 1960s. It wasn't meant as a derogatory term. It doesn't mean the people who live there are fringe. It was meant to describe this buffer area around a municipality that could be the host of development pressure for development looking to get cheaper land that's not serviced just outside of a municipality. So that's the core concept. Our policy set a buffer of 5 kilometers around the city of Kamloops and a 2-kilometer buffer around our other member municipalities. What's the science behind that? Don't have a science. That was the number that was decided politically. So again, that could be something that the board wants to discuss as an example of, why is it 5 and not 4 or 3 or some other number? And I'm not sure how much detail you want me to get into. There's about 8 policies. There is 8 policies in the document. And what my plan was at Committee of the Whole was to bring all 8 up and one by one we go through them. Because what I need as staff at this point, I've heard rumblings, I've heard different comments. I need to know where it hurts. I need to know which parts of it aren't working. Is it the name? Is it the fact that we have the policy? Is it the specific policies within there? Is it just the buffer distance? And I think once we can figure out where it hurts, then we can figure out where we go from there. Is it getting rid of it entirely? Is it just updating it to modern times with some modern language? That's the direction that I'll need as staff. And so, but welcoming any comments today from the EA directors, but I'll be asking the same question at Committee of the Whole and hoping that we can drill down on it.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Alex. Was this, I guess we don't have much history around it. I was just wondering whether this was an EA directors or municipal director, or was it, and it sounds like there was a committee put together to look at the fringe area. So I would imagine it included EA directors as well as municipal directors on creating the policy.
Yes, I don't have it off the top of my head, and I could look into that for the committee of the whole meeting. I did look at the minutes. I'm not sure if it started municipal. It felt like it was a mutual concern that they had at the time. And I know that planning committee ran for a number of years, and it was actually an interesting concept of, it was almost like an advisory committee made up of municipal and EA directors, I believe. And they would look at these applications before it ever went to the board level. That was disbanded later, but you can definitely tell from the times that there was just concern. Remember, we were just created in 1967. Zoning was introduced in 71, 72, 73, somewhere in there. So by 1980s, they started to have this concern about growth on the edge of communities. And yes, at the time, it was mainly about Kamloops at that juncture. And so I don't know who started it, but it felt mutual, at least from what I recall.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the board? Director Grenier? And I think everybody will get a chance to speak. I think it's a concern that we have. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alex. I have a question and then I have some personal knowledge of some of this. The first question I have is, were there any OCPs in the TNRD at the time that there was the fringe area policy, or did the OCPs come after?
OCPs came after, and it was before even what was called the official settlement plans at the time.
Right.
So I think you're bringing up a good point. There was no policy in place, so they used that tool to have some kind of regional policy in the absence of other long-range planning.
And I guess my personal experience as in the private sector as a developer that came to town in 1994, this was a very blunt instrument, this fringe area policy. I was developing a property that was actually outside of the fringe area policy, but I was treated as if I was in the fringe area policy, and my meetings were in conversation with the former CAO of the city of Kamloops at the time. And he explained to me that the fringe area policy was put in place because they saw the community river shore be built outside of the city of Kamloops. He indicated that river shore would not have been something that he would have approved because it was a residential development drawing people outside of the city to live in a lower tax environment. And consequently, that's why he was looking to address the fringe area policy on a project that I was putting together. And the questions around that were, what are you contributing to the city? And we had an extensive discussion about development cost charges versus hookup fees for water utilities. We had conversations about what the development that I was proposing would bring in terms of its share of recreation and public amenities. And some of those are with us today. And I think that the exploration of those items, I don't have a problem with that. But it was a pretty amorphous document, didn't apply to me in the kilometer range. And here it was, I had basically two people that I had to get approval, or two groups. I had to get approval from the city of Kamloops, and I had to get approval from the TNRD. And so we approached it that way, and we obviously gained approval. I guess the question I have, the first point is, have we outgrown the fringe area policy? We do have OCPs in place. We do have a concept of what we're trying to achieve in parks and trails and recreation and participation in recreation. And I don't think it's the naming of it. I think I agree the fringe area policy puts a cast on it that maybe somebody not looking at it would say, gee, that's kind of a strange way to describe a buffer. But I think that the concept, the policy has been eclipsed by things that we have done in our term, where we have now renewed an agreement with the city of Kamloops, and we have an agreement with small municipalities that gives them a voting say. They participate in our OCPs. We define collectively what the land uses are in the TNRD outside of these municipalities. So I would be very much in favor of reviewing the fringe area policy in its entirety with the very big question, has it been replaced by OCPs to begin with? Because that's what our official community plans are directing us, how land use in that. So that would be comments and a suggestion that I would put forward in this discussion.
Director, pardon me, and a bit of a moment. Gotta get my brain focused again. Director Houghton.
You even got it right this time. I guess when I brought it up, it was not being from the development world, but going through a few of these items that we had and all. The one at Knutsford rings a bell where we kind of went against you a little bit, Alex, and went against the LR to allow that trust company to apply to the LR to do something at the old Knutsford egg grading station site. And the word fringe, and the word fringe, since we got here, like a few of us, I don't even think knew it existed. I know Director Grenny did, but it's been kind of a name that's been kind of eaten on me as rural versus urban kind of society we live in. And that the name part was the one that got to me. As far as the inner workings, I was going to suggest a recommendation to listen to Director Grenny, because Director Grenny has been through all this, and you know, I'd strongly would you know, support whatever recommendation he recommends. So I'll just leave it at that. To me, it was if we can renew the name to a good neighbor policy, if we're going to keep it, and you know, if you want the inner workings worked on, I'll leave you to make that motion, Director Grenny.
Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I have three things. One, I don't particularly care for the name. It does sound like the areas outside in the municipalities are somewhat lesser just by the term. And that is probably modern terminology that needs to be addressed. I do echo Director Grenier that I think that this may be an antiquated policy that we do not need to have any longer. It seems like we have other things that fill in this gap that once existed. The third thing I'd like to bring up is that while it talks about what happens in a rural area, the municipality has a say in it. It seems that if something the municipality does that would impact an electoral area, there is no consultation. I can think of an example where, and I'm not saying everything a municipality does needs electoral area consultation, but if it's something that is going to impact electoral area residents that is happening on the edge of municipality, I do think that there needs to be a discussion. I can think of a cement batch plant that went into a municipality on the very edge of the municipality that nobody that lived within the municipality would see, smell, hear, but it did impact and does impact electoral area residents. And I think as a courtesy, if we're going to all work collaboratively, we need to collaborate. Thank you.
Director Son.
Thank you. I've got 2 points or questions. First, Mr. Kraus, when was the last time this policy was used? Has it been used under our term or reference to? I don't remember during our term last 3 years. And sorry, second part of that question is it effective? Are the stakeholders who were involved in that in the most recent case, were they happy with the application results from the policy?
Through the chair, yes, it's used. It's used regularly by staff. There's inquiries. We have these discussions. There would have been some applications. Director Houghton brought up the one that was in Knutsford, where staff have to refer to the policy that's there. Is it effective from whose perspective? So from purely a land use planning perspective, it's still a good tool. I mean, whether it's in this document or embedded into OCPs, I agree. where that policy lives, but the policy or the concept itself is a good one. But does everybody agree with it or like it? No, because if you're the one trying to do said development on the edge of a municipality, there's policies that are against that. So that's never comfortable. But from a purely land use planning perspective, it's still a correct concept. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where, well, I guess similar to Alberta, where you have, say, a big box retailer wants to not locate in the municipality because it's cheaper to go to, say, Knutsford. And so the planning principle is that shouldn't happen. It should belong in the municipality. And that's all this is trying to say. I mean, I could go through all the policies. There's only 8 of them. In several places throughout the document, I reread the whole thing again. It keeps talking about where there's mutual agreement between the municipality and the regional district. It's good to go. That's always what we've told people. It's not, no, you can never do this. It's we need to have a discussion with the municipality. So if it's a one-off, whatever it might be, municipality isn't concerned by it. We've had several applications, and that's for temporary use permit for the RV storage. We're going to have another one coming pretty soon where the municipality said, it's been there for a long time. We don't have room in our municipality for that type of use. We're good with it. But they had a say, their staff had a say. At the end of the day, regardless of what they say at their municipal level, they still all have to vote here. All 27 members have to vote. And I've even seen from the minutes, votes have changed. See, one thing that has changed probably about 15 years ago is it used to be that all referrals for this would go to, say, city council or to municipal council in the other small municipalities. And a change I've noticed is now it's just handled at the staff level. So it's staff at the City of Kamloops, planning staff, giving their opinion on it. And we include that in the board report, just like we do the opinion of our advisory planning committee or the Ministry of Transportation or Interior Health. But ultimately, it's this board that then makes the actual vote. And I have seen it even where municipality was against it when it went to their table. But when they had the public hearing and they heard both sides of the story, they completely changed their vote. And it's okay, they're not bound by that. And throughout the document as well, it keeps repeating, you are not bound by this. There's a specific policy just to that effect that the board is not bound by it. But to Director Grenier's point, are there developers who have asked questions and then staff have to read the policies and say, we're discouraging this, this is not a good idea? Yes, that's what the document says. So have there been people scared off by that? It's an absolute consequence. So that is an absolute point. But is it that all this development was shut down? Or I've heard things like the municipality has a veto vote on it. It's not a veto. They have a say. They were given a say through this process. And there is actually a reciprocal policy that was added in 2013, 2014, asking our member municipalities to send us a referral when there is development. Full acknowledgement, that's not happening in all the municipalities. Don't forget, some of these municipalities have had high changeover of staff. Not everyone remembers that the TNRD has a policy that we're asking them to follow. It's not their policy. It's our policy we're asking them to follow. So could we do things like improve the communication on that? Absolutely. And that's a fair point. But the concept itself is still a good one from a planning perspective. If we get rid of this document and put it into OCPs or have that kind of language in there, yes, that's doable too. Don't forget, we don't have official community plans throughout the region. We're working on doing them. The new ones that we're doing, like the North Thompson one was the first, rather than just doing areas, we're doing the entire electoral area. We did A, B, and O. Now we're doing M and N and L and P. So we're capturing the whole area. So when we move to that model, eventually we'll have a OCP around every municipality, but right now we don't.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Second question related to OCP. I just want to clarify, what is the current policy in when electoral areas develop an OCP? Is there a requirement in our TNRD policy to have municipal input, and vice versa when a municipality updates their OCP? Is there anything in their policy to engage the surrounding EAs? Thank you.
So under the Local Government Act, we're required to consider referrals to our municipalities. That's every regional district has to do that. So early in every process, when we start an OCP, we ask the board to approve a list of referral agencies. So we include our member municipalities. So on the latest projects, the board has approved us to have conversations with Chase, Sun Peaks, Logan Lake, Merritt, Kamloops. Sorry, the second part of the vice versa. Yeah, so they don't legally have to send us, they also have to consider whether referral is necessary. And most or all have shared, at least at the staff level, a comment or opportunity for comment. At some stage, sometimes later than we would like, rather than early, but they will send us a referral at some stage. Secondly, we're in a unique situation that we have a regional growth strategy. And where we have a regional growth strategy, the legislation requires that every municipality include in their OCP a statement as to how they will meet our regional growth strategy. And that context statement has to come to the board for endorsement before the municipality is allowed to adopt their OCP. So there's another mechanism to say, how does your municipal OCP tie into our regional vision? So there's an example again of, and that's because we have a regional growth strategy. Not all regional districts have that. And all of this stuff, I believe, was based on this principle that we work together here in this region, municipal and EA, as opposed to us versus them, which is the mindset of many other regional districts, frankly.
Go ahead, Doug.
I guess another one that comes to mind where I first heard that name, I think it's earlier on in our term, Wani Creek Winery made an application to came to us for approval of one of their greenhouses to be converted into a wedding center and a craft fairs on the weekend center. And I can remember Director O'Reilly bringing that name up. I think it's where I first heard it, the fringe area. He said, how is that going to affect our fringe policy? And I kind of looked at him like, what the heck is that? And, you know, they were concerned, what is that going to do to something within inside the city limits? So we all approved it that day, but they had concerns, yeah, and probably rightfully so. But I mean, we communicated and we voted on it. So.
I just have a question. How many times have we had municipal voting interfere with the planning that the TNRD is doing in the fringe area? From my time on the board, I can't remember it ever being a large, problem.
Does the chair know interfere? I mean, it really hasn't. I've even looked through the minutes of some of the controversial ones we've had around Kamloops. I was interested to see, and you can't tell a certain pattern. There were times where it was the opposite, where City Kamloops supported it. Some of the A directors were against it. Because I think what happens is when they get to this table and you hear, and what's one of the biggest things in all the applications that you deal with is the public component, right? You want to hear what happens. We just had one that was denied not too long ago before Christmas. You hear from the public and your mind changes. And so I think each individual member votes based on what they heard and what they think is right. They're not necessarily doing block voting of us versus, so even the City of Kamloops doesn't block vote in here in terms of land use that I've seen. So I'm just not seeing that it's a thwarting or blocking of development or that there's this divide. I think each issue is looked at case by case, but they'd like to have a say and we'd like to get the input of the municipality before proceeding if it may have an impact on them. So yes, Monty Creek Winery, they brought it up there. I'd have to look if that's even within. It's come up again with the second dwelling question. What impact would it be if all properties around Kamloops have second dwellings? But I also think it's can't speak for them, but it seems to be that they're just asking us to think about the consequences on municipalities when we make these decisions, which staff are and EA directors are and everybody is. So it's just healthy as part of the conversation, but not thwarting it or preventing it, I don't think.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you. I just wanted to chime in through you, Chair. I know in late last year, or maybe it was the middle of last year, Clinton was doing an OCP as well. And they reached out to myself. I'm sure they touched base with planning as well, but they reached out to Director Smith as well and sat down. And I think you went into Clinton and had a conversation. So staff work with staff really well, and we were always communicating. And it does go both ways in a lot of situations. So I just wanted to highlight that as a recent conversation we had with a municipality.
Director Hayward?
Couple of things. Trent, fringe area has always rubbed me wrong. It sounds like that's where the bad guys go. It is a transition area. I don't know if that's a usable word, but that sounds a lot better than a fringe area. Usually if you're on the fringe, you're in trouble. So that's not a good word. And I think that's a part of the problem with people. When you say fringe area, their hackles come up, and I'm in the fringe area where I live, but I think I'm being pretty good. So I would love to see the word changed. And just a little bit of experience that I have had as a electoral area director. Sometimes the municipalities do things that do affect us, and they have not thought that it might because they're running their municipality. So they don't look across the transition area to see what's going to happen on the other side. And I find these things out after the fact, or my constituents are phoning me and saying, what is this? What's happening? Or we're trying to participate in something with the municipality, and it's kind of shocking that we asked. So there is some education that could really help and make a difference, to work together and to understand that the electoral areas can be your friends and help with your municipality, and vice versa, because we try hard to let our municipalities know what's going on. And I'm sure we muck up too sometimes, but I think that's a really good point to put it together and just try and get a little more on the same page, especially because we're really finding that our constituents, many that have not lived here before and are now moving here, I hate to say it, but they're coming with a big city attitude that everybody's going to know what everybody else is doing. And then you can find it out on Facebook. And that's even causing more problems. So my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Director Grenier.
Really great observations by fellow directors. We have matured since that policy has been put in place. We've talked about OCPs. We are now in the fire department business. We're in the water utility business. We're in a lot of businesses that we weren't in, that are municipal in nature, since that policy was put in place. And we have a document, our OCPs, that we can take the good parts of the fringe area policy and put it into our OCP. And we can deal with municipalities, adjoining municipalities, as equals. We'd like you to consult. They'd like us to consult. And I think consulting is a good thing. But I don't think that this antiquated document puts the emphasis on the right syllable. And so that's one thing. The other part I point out is that the province is asking us, the regional district, to get in the game of land development and get in the game of housing people affordably. So here we are with a policy that says, oh, don't do that because somebody in the 1950s thought it was a bad idea. The land planning concepts in the 1950s are interesting, but I don't think they're particularly relevant. And that, if you look at the 1980 CAM plan, which referred to fringe area policy, or the fringe area policy that talks about what the thinking was from historic land planning, I think we've passed that. So I think we need a wholesale review, take the good parts, put it into the OCPs that we've got. The communication part with our neighbors, absolutely. And I think we should set about developing our areas as we see fit. I don't want to see Cherry Creek develop as the city of Kamloops. I want to see it develop as Cherry Creek. I want to see agricultural land areas modified so that they work for the people that own the land and accomplish agriculture and housing in a different way than you would in the city. We had a conversation as a group just the other day, last year, where we were talking about taking the area that you're allowed within a home to make a separate unit outside of the home. And we had a big discussion about what the size of that should be. And I think that our perspective as rural areas is different than if we were in a municipality. So those things, I think, should be contemplated in within the concept of our OCP. And I'm sure there's good planning concepts that we would want to carry forward out of the fringe area policy into that. But I think it's time that we set about on our own course. And remember, all the municipalities have a say in our OCP. We have allowed for that in our planning concepts. So I don't think that there's any danger of something escaping their view. Those are additional thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Director Morris?
Thank you. I'm not sure that I would add too much more to that. And clearly the folks that have spoken and Mike in particular, the thoughts, but just a couple of them. Simply, I do believe the word fringe doesn't need to be involved in our conversation anymore. We need to look at the broader picture of all that are engaged here. I think that one's really important. So yeah, get that word changed. The longer term vision is about setting the next 20 or 30 years, as it were. And that's that sense of the OCPs and where they're going. I think we really need to dig down and look at what that future can look like. So just using a very simple example, we mentioned River Shore and what River Shore did back in the 70s. I think there was an Adcock and a few others involved in that particular initiative. And what it did was it pulled a chunk of land outside the city limits, and it turned it into a housing development, as it were. Those are the kinds of things that are going to continue to occur on benches of land, including some right along the South Thompson as well. So for me, we use the words regional strategy and all that. I think we need to make that focus not on the word fringe, but more on where are the natural areas that would encompass and embrace further development. So I think that's where we truly need to go. And I have a number of other thoughts that I don't think you need to hear me share at this point in time.
Thank you. Director Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on some of Alex's comments about the power of the people and the public consent. An example is the city of Victoria. When I was working over there years ago, their policy was no big box stores within the city limits. So all of a sudden Costco comes to town and they move out to Colwood because that's where they got to go, and Home Depot moves out to Colwood because Victoria won't allow them any closer. So then what happens is now there's a huge housing development happening out there because that's kind of where it's at. And that's where, I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't buy a house just because Costco was down the street, but that's kind of what, the power of the people. Fast forward a few years afterwards, and all of a sudden a main anchor store in the Hillside Mall, which is a big mall in the city limits, and Walmart, who they've prevented from moving into Victoria, comes to them and says, we'll take over that space. So they put it to public opinion, and the public said, yeah, we want Walmart in. And so today, Walmart, Home Depot, everybody, all of the other big box stores other than Costco are now inside the city limits as well as outside the city limits. So it's the policies are all there, and they're for information, as you say, Alex, but at the end of the day, if it goes to public hearing, you're gonna kind of make your decisions based on what your residents are looking for. So it's not written in stone, I don't think. And I always felt that it was kind of for the municipality's benefit. because they were the first ones to say, as Mike brought up about development outside the city limits and what's in it for us once you do that. But really, it's more of a two-way program. And other than maybe a name change, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel.
Thanks. Director Oswald, do you have comments that you would like to make? Oh.
I didn't have any comments, but I'll make a comment then. I do think that this would be a great conversation with the committee of the whole.
Yep.
And move it forward to that.
Yep. Great. Okay. I have a few thoughts. I do agree that the current policy is quite outdated. I guess one of the things that we have to rely on is for our planning department to be able to transfer all the things that are required right now that you use on a daily basis. It is now in the fringe policy to make sure that it's included in your planning. I think that's important, and where that goes into OCP, or if we have a different planning that incorporates both regional and municipal directors and our staff involved in development in our communities. I think it's important to do that. Obviously, listening to our planning department, they're of the similar opinion. There's things in there that are very worthwhile, and how you incorporate that into whether it's an OCP or however it gets incorporated. I don't think we should lose that ability to communicate on a regular basis on development or whatever items that are up for discussion. We're getting into trails and regional parks and all kinds of different things. And I think we do have to be able to consult and make sure it works for everybody. Anyway, I would appreciate that the current one sort of definitely gets revamped and made current as to where we're at. I noticed the fact that one of the things they noted was land values being cheaper in the regional districts than in the cities, and that's not the case anymore. Land values in regional districts can be the same or more than in a city. So there's so many outdated much information in there. The other question I have that I don't see where we've talked about it was inclusion of our First Nations that live within either the city or on, as we used to call it, the fringe areas, whether or not we consult with them on what our planning is and where we're going with the development. Is that something that we need to look at doing as part of the inclusion of First Nations? Because it's changed so much. Now we all realize the amount of, I guess, not power, but they have so much more ability to be involved. And right now, they very seldom involve municipal government or regional districts because they have their own government and they don't have to even talk to us if they don't want to. So that's a concern that we're not involving any First Nations in discussions.
Yes, through the chair on that question. For long-range planning, so like our new OCPs that we're doing, we're absolutely engaging. We're trying to meet with First Nations that are willing to meet to talk about our high-level plans. We absolutely do that. Currently, we do not refer like rezoning applications, variances, temporary use permits to the bands. It's been brought up in the past by previous boards. I think to a certain extent, we're waiting for legislation to change to give clear direction on when referrals do have to go to First Nations versus not. What has happened in the past, and it's swung both ways over the years, is one, the board has been concerned that the more referrals, the more input there is, the slower our processes are, and that we're not able to make a decision like on a simple variance or rezoning on jurisdiction that we feel we have. Secondly, often the band's concerns are not so much with the application itself, but it's the use of it's a broader issue, often related to provincial government approvals. So then the board was put in a difficult situation where we hear this input, we're asked to not approve it or to do something that we don't have the authority to do. And then it became an exercise of we're sending a referral, we're getting input, and then we just steam ahead with it each time anyway. So all a long way of saying, I think we have to have a whole separate discussion on what that looks like moving forward, both with the agreements that we're making with bands. And I also think that legislation is going to catch up at some point. There's also pressure on us to refer building permits to bands. Some municipalities are already doing that. I mean, the legislation does not say that we have the authority to do that. So a lot of this is still to be determined, but all part of good conversations to have.
My experience with building permits, we had the same issue. We had any building permits that were issued within the city of Merritt had to be referred to that time they actually had a band council. The problem there is they didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the staff. And we would send out a building permit application and we would never hear back. And so the way we dealt with that was when we send out an application, they had X amount of time to reply. And that's the only way we could move forward because the requirement was that we had to have input from First Nations. And the only way we got around the fact that they didn't have the capacity to do that was to put a time limit on the response. And once the time limit was up, the building permit moved forward. I don't know if we have issues like that now. Do we refer anything of our permits to the local native bands?
Building permits are not referred. Where we have known archaeological sites, then we tell the owners of their obligations under that, and the bands have been supportive of us at least communicating that. It becomes a legal question. I'm not sure we have the legal authority to hold up a permit waiting for a referral. The legislation under that's quite clear. If you meet our bylaws, we're legally obligated to issue the permit. So again, there needs to be clarification from a legislative perspective before we can do that. On the land use planning referrals that we've done in the past, yes. But again, this is where, is that engagement? Is that proper? Where we write a letter and say you have 35 days to respond or we're moving forward. There was a question of whether that's really genuine and effective other than checking a box that we sent a letter. And many of the bands did come back to us and say, we don't have capacity. We need 3 months to be able to look at something like this. So then the question is, does the application wait for that? Do we wait for that answer and still move ahead? So the sending of the referral is not the hard part. It's how do we actually take that input and are we just checking a box that we're doing it, or is this meaningful? So those are the questions.
Thank you. Any other questions on or information you want to share on the policy? Herb, did you have any comments? No? Okay. Oh. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Just from a municipal perspective, because we did have one come before council, and that was the Eco Depot at Boston Flats. I see this as a useful tool, not for municipalities to sharpen their knives and put the kibosh on anything, but just to get information. In an ideal world, the municipal directors at this table, the mayors, would be going back to their councils and giving them full information about anything that was proposed, because of course they're learning about it here. We don't live in an ideal world. Also, having someone come and speak to all of council gives all the councillors a chance to hear about it at firsthand, rather than getting it filtered through someone else's interpretation or having to go off and read a report that they might not understand because they don't sit around this table. So to me, it's an information gathering exercise, no more, no less. And I suspect that most municipalities just appreciate hearing about it firsthand because, we do get questions from our constituents as well. And it's not just the mayor who gets them, it's the councillors as well. So should it work both ways? Absolutely. And I will take that back to my CAO in Ashcroft.
Thank you. So as has been explained, this will be coming up. Was that a March committee of the whole? I think it was.
I believe it's April. But
April, yeah. So we'll have a full board discussion at that time. Director Grenier.
I'm sorry. I was going to propose option number 3. We have 3 options here. So I'd like to propose that. as a motion.
Yes.
Now I need to use my mic. That option 3 was from the previous meeting, so that this report was just attached for reference. It's not that it's something for the board to, or for the committee to decide on at this time, unless you would like to propose a motion for that. But I mean, I would defer to Alex and let him.
Thank you for that. I'd like to propose that
Okay.
option, taking it to the committee of the whole for further discussion. That would be a motion that I'd like to make.
And I don't think we need that as a motion. That's already in the agendas as far as being discussed at the committee. Though, go ahead.
We've already had a motion for this to go to the committee of the whole, so it will be going in April, and it is on the agenda. Thank you.
And the reason I asked this to go on our EA director's agenda is so that we could have a discussion amongst EA directors, because it's quite different when you get into 27 members sitting around the table. Sometimes you're not wanting to come forward with what your thoughts are. And this just gives an idea of where the EA directors committee is thinking about the fringe policy. I'll be surprised if it's any different once we get to the main board for the discussion. So it was a great discussion. Everybody had their comments and they've been noted by staff. Thank you. The next item is electoral elected official orientation discussion. I put this on the agenda because our in-camera meeting that we had, it became apparent that a lot of the issues and the discussion we had around EA directors and yeah. Yes.
As that discussion was not released to the public, it's probably best not to discuss it right now publicly, in the sense that it was.
I mean,
We can discuss what's on the agenda at the moment, but not just the history of how you got to that decision, as it was not released to the
oh,
public.
okay, it's fine. Anyway, we sat through that meeting and this is the results. How's that work? Sorry about that. I do feel it's important that we have a proper orientation for directors. The information that that Scott shared with us on Monday was basically a report on how the TNRD board operates. It was 128 pages. I found that some of the information was outdated. And I don't, and that was all that was there, was just the operation of the board at the TNRD district, how everything functions. I would like to see a much smaller, more concise orientation. I'm not sure. I'd like to hear from the directors on what their challenges were, because there's 8 new directors in the room from the orientation that we had when you were elected. And it's a little easier when you've been involved for a number of years to understand how it works. So I'd just like each director to make a comment. Go ahead, Scott.
If I would, if you don't mind, I was going to maybe see if Ms. Jeremiah could just provide a kind of a bit of an overview of those documents and where they came from and when they were communicated, and then open it up and we can take notes on kind of how we want to change those, if that's okay with you.
Sure, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So historically, with the orientation documents, the idea is to provide an overview of what staff is doing, what the departments are doing, what the regional district does as a whole. As we do get new elected officials over that 4-year period, many are not familiar with the operations and the responsibilities of a regional district. So what we've done historically is provided all of that information into a rather large document, but there is a lot of information that, pertains to regional district business and the services that we provide. Historically, we've also provided an overview of some of our policies and our board procedure bylaw as it does pertain to the board itself and the interactions of the board. So what we're asking now is that information I mean, absolutely, information changes over time. It's not a living document in the sense of we're sending it out annually and updating the board on any changes. It's just that this is meant as a reference document for directors when they come in as elected officials, to have that understanding. So what we're wondering is, in addition to what we provide as the overview, is there anything else that would be beneficial, or you feel that would be beneficial to include in an orientation document for elected officials and newly elected officials who have never been part of a regional district board?
Thank you. I was looking at this as an orientation for not just new EE directors, but also existing directors. Because when you look over the 4 years, as you say, there's been so much changed in the requirements as a director. It would be information that would probably help all of the directors to be updated on what their responsibilities are and how the process works. A lot of our issues come up over there, not understanding the process and how we need to approach different topics. It might be hard to put into orientation, but it might help to have all directors involved, not just new ones. Because municipal, there'll be new municipal directors too, I would imagine. So that was my thoughts behind putting the orientation meeting, not just for EA directors, but for the whole board. So with that, I would like comments from each of the EA directors that have been involved for the last 4 years. Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. It is interesting. When we got elected, there was the 8 of us that were new, the 2 returning directors, and we're of course watching to see what happens. Simple little things like how do you address the chair? That kind of, what's the formalities of speaking with each other? I thought about that over the weekend, and I was thinking, would some kind of a mock meeting just to explain how you address the chair and how you address the staff and what would be the procedure, as opposed to trial by fire and a few awkward moments at the beginning, I found anyway. So that's one bit of feedback. The other I found was when we started to deal with budgets, we were actually out at the new terminal, and I was talking to Jamie, and one of the very biggest contracts that we were about to sign, this transportation agreement for waste, he said to me, he said, "Oh, well, that's going to be one of the biggest contracts that you guys deal with." And we were dealing with it within the first 2 or 3 months, and really I had no relative perspective on that. And it was in the course of looking at that I realized that some of these costs are borne differently by different areas. And indeed, last year, Scott put together a little schedule that said, forget the voting for a minute, the weighted votes. Here's who pays what on certain things. And we have all come to learn that, there are parts where the city of Kamloops participates in things like library, but they don't participate in things like the weight, that very contract that we talked about. There are smaller things that EAs deal with directly that aren't dealt with by all the municipalities. So I think that document perhaps that you put together, some kind of orientation that says, quite apart from votes and weighted votes, here's who pays what on the big ticket items. That might be useful to put some context in it sooner than later. I remember sitting down at a coffee shop with some of the city of Kamloops counselors who were absolutely convinced that they paid 65% of everything. And they pay 65% of the stuff that they participate in, but they pay much less on other things. And I'm sitting there with 3 city councilors who are saying, really, this is our perception, but you'd have to talk to one of our more experienced councilors to confirm that. And there was some skepticism about that. So I think that it's useful for our entire board to have that perspective, not just the voting ones that are in the schedule. And then the last thing, we have spent a lot of time on surplus and reserve, coming to terms with what is a surplus and what is a reserve and those sorts of things. The surplus and reserve policy, we've made tremendous advances in our budgeting and our process. And I think that the orientation, particularly given that the elections take place in October and we're on the cusp of a very brand new budget that these councillors are going to have to deal with, that's something that makes them alive to what is the surplus, what is the reserve, and what are we trying to do in the timeframes that we're talking about. So those would be some feedback that I was experiencing when I first got on the board.
Chair, if I could respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Director Grenier. Really good comments, good topics. I think it's something we've captured. I know we've captured them now, but I know we've already been thinking about. I know back to 3 years ago when we did that orientation, and we do an orientation with this board, so the 27 of you. But we also, if you remember, did a regional one where other councils, other municipalities join, where we talk about things that would apply to everybody, like legal things, legislative things. We had Denise McCabe come in and talk about things. We are going to do that again because that's helpful, and doing it all at once is very efficient when it comes to all of our member municipalities. But this is a funny question, but this document, that 128-page document, was provided, and we did talk about all these things back then, but it was like drinking through a fire hose. Like, people don't remember that. It doesn't sink in. We talked about, budgets and surpluses and allocations and distribution of money, but no one's ever going to remember that. So we need to try to figure out a way to simplify. To Chair Laird's comments about maybe we need to have a summary document that highlights some of the key things. So thank you for your feedback. It's helpful.
Director Morris?
Thank you. And sort of a little bit possibly off topic, but thinking about the next wave of folks that are going to be coming to be around this table and are considering running. I wonder if we've ever done a process where we've talked about engaging younger people coming into this type of a governance role, and they're kind of newer at it. I wondered if there's ever been, sorry, you have to excuse me, I am not able to turn my neck at all. So I'll try and lean this way for a second. Have we ever done a process where we know there's this next youth wave coming up underneath us, the 25 to 35-year-olds, and actually opening the doors a little bit to some sort of like a mock session where we're inviting almost that demographic? I literally have had a couple of people in the last little while who must be getting a bit of a sense that I may or may not be running again. In any case, they've come forward and said, what would it look like? How would it work? And they're looking for some mentorship on that. But would it be of value to kind of look at that and say, let's have a 1-hour mock session that people can come and be involved in, because we are truly needing and I believe wanting to look to the future in terms of that demographic that is coming up and through. So it's one of those musing comments that I'm making as opposed to a request of any kind. So I'll just leave it at that. But I certainly have had at least 2 in the last little bit who are saying, what would it be like? Here's where we are in our demographic and where we would like to be looking. Is there a way for us to literally practice and learn before we make that final decision ourselves?
And yeah, I have a comment in that I think one of the things that we don't do when we're people are thinking about running to be involved in local politics, one of the things that this orientation package can do is if there's somebody comes in and to apply to run, we can actually give them this information. This is your job and this is what you'll be expected to do. Is that a possibility of doing that?
People interested in becoming an elected official, we do host an orientation session. We also provide documentation like a booklet to say, so you want to be an elected official, and it gives you an overview of what local government is, and some additional information about the regional district, as we'd like to educate everybody on that. And we give everybody the option to ask questions, as well as we do have former elected officials or, some elected officials that may not be running for the upcoming election, provide some input and their experiences during that information session. So we do provide some information to everybody. The mock meetings, I mean, it would be interesting. I don't know how we would be able to do something like that, but I mean, it's worth looking into. And for the younger demographics as well, like the city of Kamloops, they do their junior council and things like that. So there is the opportunity for, younger members of the public to engage and participate in that way as well.
Go ahead, Chair.
Thanks. I'm glad you said that. My very first newly elected official seminar in Kelowna in 2015, they did a mock public hearing. And so it was elected officials who had been in there for a while, and they did it was like a skit. And so they did a public hearing gone terribly wrong. And you could tell in hindsight, a lot of it was based on probably their personal experiences. So it was sort of showing this is what not to do at a public hearing if you're an elected official. And then they went through and did it right. And it was really, and I remember it to this day, it was such an effective way of getting it across because it was amusing, but it had a good point. It was very visual. And I think that is really a good way for a lot of people to learn because it's, rather than just looking at PowerPoints and stuff, it really brings it home. So, having those, just a little skit about a board meeting that kind of goes off the rails and then show that same board meeting when everything's firing on all cylinders would be awesome for people to see. And it would be fun to take part in too.
And that's just what I was thinking. I was wondering if you wanted to write the script. And I know we have a lot of characters on 27 people that you could probably fit in. And it might be a worthwhile exercise. It would break the ice and give everybody a chance to go, holy smokes, what am I doing here?
That is a good idea, and it is something we could probably provide a video or something to include on the website or with an information package so that people could, click onto it and see how it works versus like having to come publicly and in person and run through it.
Well, we do have the stage, which we're all sitting at, and we have all the cameras and that we need to actually do that sort of a information skit or however you want to say it. Maybe that's something we could consider. And I like the idea of having it available for not just a board meeting around new orientation where anybody can go on and look at it. It might help people understand a little bit more of what we do as a board. That's a great idea. Thank you. Director, I always call you Trish, so Trish. I always have to think about your last name. So.
She's good enough.
And it's quite easy one to remember, but it doesn't happen all the time.
So I'm going to run through this with the questions. What were your challenges as a new director in 2022? One of the things I struggled with because coming as a private citizen is who do you go to for what? I was used to if I had a question, I'd reach out to the TNRD staff or I'd reach out to Village of Lytton staff or whomever. And that line, like where do you draw those lines? Who do you reach out? When do you reach out to TNRD staff to have them reach out to a municipality? When do you reach out directly to the other elected official? Because as an elected official, I'm not supposed to reach out to anybody's staff. But those are things that inherently you don't always understand if you're coming from a private sector. So maybe explaining that was a big challenge for me. Information, helpful as a new director. Now, this is something that maybe we as a group can help with, is having contacts, like knowing who to talk to. Who's your contact for TELUS? Who's your contact for Hydro? Who do you contact with if you've got road issues? Even though those are not in our ballpark, we do get questions from residents. So having that cheat sheet would have been huge. I started from scratch. I've got a lovely cheat sheet that I would share with anybody. So maybe some of those things to make life easier. 4 years of experience. What do you feel would be helpful? Directors. Okay. I think that it would be nice if we had a little breakaway session where we talk to EA directors directly, because electoral areas are not the same as municipal. And maybe just explaining what we do. But I think it would also be beneficial to let other new directors know what an EA is, what an electoral area director is, what our roles are, that we represent large numbers of people. And that, maybe working on that collaboration piece. Like if you've got something happening, talk to your EA. Maybe you guys can work together. If an EA's got something happening, talk to municipal. So maybe working on that collaboration right from the start, instead of it's like, this is municipal, this is EA, this is what, like, it goes back to that fight, that challenge that we have trying to get in front of provincial ministers. So maybe if we start the collaboration right at the grassroots level, we can improve that for the next crop. Thank you.
Thank you. You and I are on the exact same wavelength of sharing contacts with the incoming directors, and I think that's a great idea. I'm going to say one of the challenges that I faced was just understanding the expectations of communication with the staff. And I have asked multiple times and I always get the same answer, but I feel truly awkward when it's a question that is going to say management and solid waste, but I have to copy Scott and Jamie and Kevin and just to cover the basis. So having that very, very clear would have been helpful for me. And I still I still feel awkward. Like I feel like a tattletale when I'm copying Scott, and I don't like that. But I understand the reasons behind it as well. So anyway, just clear communication on that would be beneficial. And then another thing that I found as an incoming director, even though we have the compensation policy and all that stuff, was just truly what are the expectations of attending outside events? What are the expectations of being on committees? What are the things that you're volunteering for? And what are the things that you're getting paid for? And it's clear to me now, but it certainly was not clear at the beginning of my term. And I found that to be quite confusing. Letting the elected officials know that it is okay to say no to outside groups who are asking for your time because of your position and not necessarily respecting the fact that you are there as a volunteer in that type of position sometimes. And then another thing that I found was when I came in on Area B, I felt that the community was really disrespectful of the municipal government. And I think that through communication, things have improved over the last couple of years. However, we had a lady come and talk to us early on in the term, and she had this book called The Joy of Governing. And it was really beneficial for me to have listened to a pep talk from someone who loved being in the role of public service, because I found it very, very uncomfortable at the beginning. And so to have that as sort of a mental support and get the rah and like, this is the good that you can do and the benefit that you can have for your community. So something around the mental health and the joy that you can actually achieve in this role, and maybe some of the challenges and overcoming the challenges. So those are a few things for me. Mine more was, just on the emotional side of being in a role that is now a community leader and not truly being prepared for it and not understanding exactly what I signed up for. And I think a lot of people are in that position, and then just, I don't know, maybe the reassurance that it will be okay and you will settle in. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually put down a few items. Some of them have been mentioned. I'm just going to go through what I feel is important. Introduction of department directors, who that would be the basically who we as EA directors communicate with. The two most important communications that I have is with Scott and Jamie because they do a lot for EA directors. Jamie has a quite large portfolio that covers a lot of the core services. The other one I have is core services of the TNRD and being able to explain. I think there's only 4 or 5 that are key that goes right through the whole regional district, including municipal members. The other thing that sometimes you have a hard time wrapping your mind around is specified areas. There's so many specified areas in all our EA directors' areas, and you have to know what it is and how it works. You do find that out over time, but I don't know. It's important that you understand that. I've got, as he's mentioned, how board meetings work and how committee meetings work, and how directors work with staff. And those have been covered already. The expense forms, those are changed so much. When I got elected, I didn't know there was such a thing as an expense form. I thought I just showed up and went to work and they paid me something, whatever it was. But it's all lots of good information there now on how to handle that part. Also, the key things are the associations that we deal with. Basically, we have the EA forum right now that's just changed where EA directors go down specifically on EA for a 2-day conference and usually in Richmond. We have SELGA, that is our association within our area. We have UBCM and FCM. And most of the time, we all use acronyms. And after you've been here for a while, you understand what they are. And we should maybe make it clear because all directors will have the opportunity to go and participate in those different events. And the other thing, I wasn't too sure, do we still operate on Robert's rules in our system? And a lot of people now, if you say Robert's rules, they don't even know who Robert is, let alone did he have rules? And it's so important. Robert rules are so important when you're running a meeting that it's repeated. The same process is used at every meeting. And you probably, if you asked somebody on the street what Robert's rules were, they wouldn't have a clue. But it's very important to make our system work. What else I got? Just going to go through it here. I don't know about the grant and aid. I know that's really changed over the years that I've been here. And I find the process right now, we have the ability to handle our own grant and aid, which is approximately $13,000 a year. But you have to understand the process and how it works. So when you're talking to people in your communities, they know how the process works. And also, I always work with whoever I'm giving a grant and aid to, that they understand the process and help wherever you can. And on the code of conduct. Now, that is something that's brand new. And that's important that everybody understands the code of conduct, because I would imagine as soon as you become elected, you have to sign the code of conduct. That's part of your orientation. So those are the items I've had.
Chair, if I could just.
Yes,
if I
go ahead.
comment. Code of conduct will maybe become legislation depending on what the province has chosen to do. They said they would have something in place that would be consistent for all municipalities and regional districts going forward in the next election. So we'll see if that happens. And yes, we do follow Robert's rules, but we have our own procedure bylaw. And I remember sharing some documentations in Robert's rules, because if it's not covered in not covered in our procedure bylaw, then we refer to Robert's rules. So just wanted to give you a quick update.
Any other comments from directors? Go ahead, Doug.
Just one thing, it's been covered by yourself, Director Laird, but I think I brought this up at the Sandman at our orientation meeting when the only inclination I had what this job was kind of is when Director Gillis asked me to run for this position. And I said, what all does it entail, Ken? Here's what he said. He said, oh, it's a cakewalk hot, and you show up once a month at a meeting, you help a few people out, and you go on, and that's about it. I said, oh, okay, Ken. Well, I think there's a little more to it than that, but I guess I'll learn. So then you're successful at your nomination, and then we attended the orientation meeting at the Sandman. And I can remember all the stuff that was drilled to us that day, and there was a lot. And I remember Denise McCabe was really focused on conflicts of interest and all this kind of stuff. And I think I made the comment that day, it would have been nice for prospective elected officials running for an EA director's position when they came in to get their nomination papers is to have a little training manual, what the actual job entails, what is expected of you when you sign up for the job. Because quite honestly, I didn't have a clue. I came and watched a meeting here. I attended in the gallery. I said, oh, this seems fairly interesting. Yeah, I think I can handle that. No, not much different than 4-H. I think I can do it. And, and sure you struggle through the first while and all the different acronyms and that. And I remember asking Direct Chair Roden at the time, I didn't know Barbara from anywhere. I said, well, what do I sign up here for now? And she says, well, here's the committees that you can sit on. And you don't have to sit on anything you don't want. You just come to a monthly meeting. And I said, well, that's not really what I signed up for. So, yeah, I kind of like solid waste. And yeah, I kind of like weeds. Yeah, sure. Finances, no, that ain't my cup of tea. Governance, no. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, here, go. And it would just be nice if we had a training manual for the prospective nominees to especially the legal stuff, the codes of conduct, all that stuff. So when you take out your papers, you really know what you're getting in for. Other than that, it's kind of on the job training.
Are you suggesting that we should have a job description for this job?
Well, what is expected of you when you sign up? What are the
Yeah, that's right. I
ramifications?
understand. Yeah.
The conflicts of interest that Denise was really
Yeah.
hard on us that day on it. I really didn't know a lot about it.
No. Yeah, that's the other thing I had on my list was an actual, I think Trish brought it up too, is what is expected of you, your job description as an EA director, or a municipal director as well, because EA directors are a little bit different than municipal directors. But the job description is important. I never thought about a job description when I first started running. I just thought I'd go down and fix the garbage system that was gone amok in the city of Merritt. It took me 2 years to get that done. But that's that was why I ran for office. And then I found out all this other stuff. My God. And it has been, I've really enjoyed my time in public office. And it's been a great experience. But we can make it a lot easier for new directors coming on board, and even reminding existing directors what their jobs are and what's important, and making them a good director. Go ahead, Marty.
So the province does provide a lot of information about becoming an elected official and things like that. But we can also update So You Want to Be an Elected Official manual and include some more information just to be relevant to what your role is and what your potential obligations would be as an elected official, if that's something that would help.
Any other directors have anything to add? And go ahead, Barb.
And this is absolutely not meant to pry because it's entirely up to everyone. But if there was anyone, if there were any EA directors currently on the board who were not planning on running in October, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a head cold. Maybe with their permission, their name and contact information could be given to staff to hand out for any prospective people to sit down and talk with. Because I think that would be awesome. Someone who's done it recently, because as you mentioned quite rightly, the code of conduct is really new. So talking to someone who was an EA director back when it was called the Municipal Act is going to be terribly helpful. But being able to sit down, I mean, I had someone stop me in Safety Mart one day and say, how much do you get paid as a counselor back when I was a counselor? And I said, I don't know, $672 a month or whatever. And they just looked me right in the eye and said, oh, that's not bad for attending 2 meetings a month. I'm like, oh, sure, whatever. But there is just so much ignorance out there. I like to think that people who are actually considering running have done a little bit of homework, but there's nothing like sitting down with someone who's doing it or has recently done it, and say, be frank. So if anyone wasn't running again and felt comfortable putting their name forward, I think that would be an awesome resource to let people know if they come to the counter, hey, you can talk to Mary Smith. She's not running again, but she's indicated she'd be happy to sit down with you and give you the load. Don't scare them off. I'm just saying, but be honest.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Has the TNRD ever considered, like we have in 4-H, a junior council where you take some, especially like kids out of 4-H or other youth organizations that seem to be, you can kind of handpick them if you're on our side and say, gee, he or she might be a good, person to run for politics. Would you like to come and be part of our junior council at the TNRD and really what the junior council do is, and I think it would be something that would get younger people maybe interested into these political positions. I think today, I think a lot of people, if you listen to the press, not all press is Barb, but how can I say, the role of politics probably isn't too high in a lot of people's calendar. And I think it's important to get the youth involved like they do in 4-H with their junior council.
And I just have one other comment. When I talk to people about possibly running for my position, they don't even know the time commitment or when they need to meet. I've noticed around our board, there's very few of us that have a 8 to 4 job. It's very difficult depending on the job that you have, to get the time that you need to be able to put into attending TNRD meetings, because they're always day meetings. And I don't think most of us around this table are self-employed or retired. And that's, if you look at the makeup of our 27 members, there's very few of them that have a 24, like a regular 8 to 4 job. And that's one thing that really slows down younger people participating in TNRD. And I can't see how it could be scheduled any other way other than a day meeting. When you look at the travel and how much time you take going back and forth, it has to be done. It can't be a night meeting, evening meeting. So I don't think we'd change that, but it's important that they understand the commitment. Director Husoff.
Thank you, Chair Dave. Just sharing, not necessarily related to the manual, but yeah, just sharing ideas on preparing others for this role. For me, for choosing an alternate in this term at the beginning of it, I actually put out through social media notice, I'm looking for an alternate, and how I was hoping to find somebody 18 to 30 who has interest in the long run. Of course, it will still be up to the voters, but I want this person to be, considering this role, down the road. It was when I got zero interest from anybody 18 to 30, because like you said, it's pretty tough to have a full-time regular job and doing this properly. In the end, which was when Councillor Lampro from Simp First Nation, I extended my expression of interest to Simp, and he was interested. But for the next term, of course, the voters will have me. I do want to reach out again, so that I think the alternate role is not something that we personally, not many of us have been sick that much, but there's potential to use that role more, because they are privy to all of our discussions and everything. So just, yeah, something that I plan on try to use more. Thank you.
Director Morris.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, agree 100%. I was fortunate, not everybody would say fortunate would be the word, but I was fortunate to have the opportunity to follow Mel Rothenberger for literally 2 years. And those of you knew that I was sitting in the peanut gallery, that was why. And because he was also looking forward to that. So I think that doesn't have to be in all the cases, but it was certainly a significant advantage. So when I did finally come into, get dropped into a meeting inadvertently or ultimately ran, there were a lot of pieces of information that many people wouldn't get if they didn't have that level of some kind of mentorship. So I think that is an important piece for the future for sure. And yeah, give the youth the best chance they've got at least to learn, because ultimately maybe they'll get, you know, through their 30s and into their 40s and they will become the next people as well.
Thank you. Any other information? I think we've pretty well covered. I was just wondering if staff had any questions they wanted to ask the directors, if we've missed anything, or if there's something you feel that you need to add.
I just wanted to touch, because it's been mentioned a few times following Director Houghton's comments regarding a youth council. A lot of municipalities have that, and other not-for-profit agencies and like 4-H. When I started in this role, I did reach out. Of course, the challenge is not just the size of the TNRD in terms of getting representation from youth from across the district, regional district, but also the number of school districts that there are throughout the region. And so there was interest in some school districts, or from some school districts, and you know, School District 73 with the youth council that the city of Kamloops has were interested because they had kind of a roadmap for what they had done before. The challenge is then that's just students from primarily the Kamloops area, and it doesn't necessarily represent the rest of the regional district. And so, you know, recognizing that, of course, you know, School District 73 is also quite large and goes up to Blue River, but you know, what would be the level of interest from some of those more rural students, and making sure that those voices are also represented on a youth council. So we've had those conversations with superintendents of all of the school districts. Some of them had more interest than others. If it's something that the board would like to look back into, I think it's valuable. That's how I started getting involved in local government and politics. I sat on an advisory council in my hometown of Vernon, but you know, it's easy for a municipality to do. It's a lot harder for a regional district that's 45,000 square kilometers.
The one thing that has changed, thanks to COVID, is we now have the opportunity to do Zoom meetings. And that's where you can, if you design your, basically your youth around Zoom meetings, it's something that they all do. And they all have the opportunity of doing that. And that way they could come from all areas of the regional district if they're interested. I know we've tried it when I was on school board. We worked at that. I think we only had 2 people that wanted to come and be part of our school district governance. As far as municipal, we had very little interest in doing that, but we didn't have Zoom then. You can sit in your own home and have a meeting with, we all do that now. So that's something that has changed, and maybe we look at doing, putting a program together around being able to Zoom instead of having a face-to-face. Any other comments? Are we very well done with that? Okay. Everybody, we'll have a 10-minute break and then go into the roundtable discussion.
Chair Laird, could we please use your microphone? Thank you.
I'm glad somebody reminds me. I thought.
Noted.
Anyway, this is a fun part of the meeting where you get to tell good stories, bad stories, or what you need done in your areas. And I think it's an important part of our meeting that we all get to say something of what's happening in our area. And I do have a list. I start with A and go down to, unfortunately, Director Morris is P, so you're at the bottom of the list. Yeah, you're the. Okay, first on is Director Usoff.
Thank you, Chair. At least I was on another organization board, and I can fully appreciate your situation, Director Morris, where you wait 3 hours for your at the very bottom of the agenda, and then for some less experienced chairs to suddenly go, okay, meeting's adjourned. Yeah, so stories. I'd like to share a positive story. So I was, going through District of Clearwater's council meetings, and they were discussing their roads capital infrastructure spending budget. And, we identified some areas of roads where, there's a section which goes through Area A, connecting Clearwater to the Highway 5. And there was some potential collaboration, which I discussed with Mayor Blackwell and MOTT, which unfortunately didn't come to any fruition, but it was a good example of how, EAs and municipalities can work, to have win-win situation, try to save the taxpayer some money. Yeah, that's about it from me for Area A this time. Thank you.
Okay, next is Director Ansel.
TNRD Area B. I'll start with Avola. The little schoolhouse is being used by a group of community members, which I have mentioned in the past, but they're doing weekly gatherings, and it was a good collaboration with the Blue River Community Association to ensure that that happens. So they had a really successful cookie exchange throughout the town, and it's just really enhanced the lives of some of our seniors in Avola. So I'm happy for that. Blue River is a happening hub right now with the snowmobiling industry, as well as the heli skiing and all of our transient working residents, I guess. I shouldn't call them transient, temporary workers. Usually a bunch of young kids who are traveling, and they're from Australia, Switzerland, New Zealand, all the different places. So it's a really eclectic group in town, and it's really nice to see. We have a lot of snow. The snow quality is terrible because it got rained on. So a lot of people have sad faces, whereas 2 weeks ago they were very happy faces. Working with Interior Health for our little medical outpost. So it's getting a revamp right now, which is painting and flooring. And it's something that was desperately needed. There has not been investment into that health center for many, many years. So that is a really good thing to see. And we're also slowly increasing the suite of services that have been offered in Blue River, which is a great benefit to the residents. And then on a final note, I'd just like to do a shout out to Mike Wigley's helicopter skiing, because they again are running the Kids Camp Heli Ski program, which is taking 10 children from the community or surrounding communities and take them up to Saddle Mountain for a day of heli skiing and cat skiing. And that is a free program, and it's, I believe, the 30th year that it's been running. So they really are champions of getting youth involved in the skiing industry and teaching them. And they've made a very large investment into the children of Blue River particularly, but also the communities that are surrounding. So thank you.
Thank you. Director, it looks like it's Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Director Smith here, Area E, beautiful Bonaparte Plateau. Not much happening here actually in my area, but I have been involved in a couple of issues that we talked from time to time about whether we're staying in our lane or not. And you know, the general public, I think, feels that we're in every lane and that we can fix all of their problems. So sometimes it's a learning curve, but I did get contacted by a resident at 59 Mile, which is around the Chasm area. I'm not sure if you know where that is, but she's in the process of selling her house and has an issue with a derelict piece of property right next door where a person passed away a couple of years ago and just basically had no family or anything. So the house has gone to ruin. It's totally infested with rats. She's got a terrible rat problem. She spent $150 already on rat poisoning and still. Anyway, long story short, it turns out that it went to a tax sale and then it got forfeited to the province. So I did ask Alex to write a letter on her behalf, and also I got MLA Lauren Dirksen involved. And he sent a very pointed letter on her behalf, and the province has agreed that it is their responsibility to look after it. And I mean, I toured the property with the homeowner. Not sure if that was really the thing to do or not, but she asked me to do it. And I mean, there was it was you, if you didn't see it with your own eyes, you wouldn't have believed that it could be that way. I mean, the guy was a trapper. There was 4 freezers that had been sitting outside for a couple of years full of game, not plugged in. And there was one building out the back that was littered with live ammunition. There was probably a couple of thousand bullets of all different sizes and shapes and cans. And anyways, we got their attention pretty quick, and they did actually do a site visit last week, which surprised me how quick they got out there. And they've removed all of the ammunition, which obviously would have been a problem if a kid had got in there or whatever. But anyways, it kind of shows you that if you work together and you get the right people involved, you know, you can get stuff done. The other issue, and I haven't actually talked to Mike about this, but I've kind of was following his lead on working with school districts to see if we could acquire a building in 70 Mile, which is a school that's been not been used since the 2000s. And there's a organization that's been in there, thrift store kind of organization. So I made one preliminary call, and I spoke to the treasurer of the school district 27, and just talked to him about the possibility of some sort of an arrangements where we might have a lease of the building and be able to give the nonprofit a little bit more stability, and possibly then be able to arrange for financing to get some of the upgrades that need to be done on the school. In the meantime, I did have a conversation with MLA Lauren Dirksen again, and he's very intimately involved in several of these same situations. And basically, I've been asked to back off just to kind of let it sit for a bit, because he's had 2 or 3 situations, or he knows of 2 or 3 situations where the exact same scenario has happened. And once the school district did agree to go into some sort of negotiation about leasing the building, the province indicated that the first people that had to be talked to was the Indigenous, and they scooped them all up. Each one of them went to the Indigenous people rather than the nonprofit that he was working with. So it's an indication that there may be a shift in policy there. So I've just kind of backed off now until March, when apparently the province has got some pressure on all of the school districts to come up with a procedure as to how they're going to deal with unused properties. And that's it for RE. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Next on the agenda is Area I. That's Director Thorpe.
You're reading off the agenda now, aren't you?
Yeah, I got your name right here. It says Thorpe.
Thank you, Director Laird, or Chair Laird.
Mm.
So for Area I, beautiful blue sky country, there's a few things. First of all, we lost a fantastic community leader. I've asked the chair to speak at the board meeting tomorrow. So thank you for that, Chair. Dr. Ruby Dunstan, she was instrumental in the Stein. She was instrumental in an Indigenous school being set up. She was a true leader in so many ways. I think one of the things, just reminiscing, that she was proudest of was an honorary doctorate. She loved being called Dr. Ruby Dunstan. Her grandson used to refer to her as Dr. Yaya. I always thought that was so cute. Anyway, enough on that. She will be very missed. Highway 8 is pretty well done. They're going to pave it by June. This is a huge accomplishment considering where we were after the atmospheric river. I had an opportunity to take some time and tour it over the Christmas break. And it was amazing to see not just the restoration of the highway, but what the ministry had done in the areas where they had impact in the river. The habitat restoration there is very, very impressive. It's really something to see. It's something, I think, shout out to them for what they've done. They are looking at setting up a rest area that will be along the highway. They've been in discussions with Indigenous groups since last fall, which is fantastic. And probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll know a little bit more about it. They are going to look at a kiosk. It should have about 8 different panels discussing the environmental of the area, the flora, fauna, and it will, of course, touch on the atmospheric river, but a lot of history, that sort of thing. We had a rock slide on Highway 12 over the Christmas break. It was out for 24 hours. It was at the Big Slide. I think that stresses the importance of looking at some of these Fraser slide projects because that's in an area that is very prone to slide. And if that goes out, it cuts off another artery. They're all through the Fraser Canyon, all the way from up north, all the way down to Yale. It's something of a concern. I was talking to a community group about their hall and about possible funding options. One of them being there is sort of a grant and aid program where we can actually, if the community approves it, take taxation to go to the community group to help pay for the maintenance. They have decided at this point they don't want to proceed with that. So that's on the back burner. I am working on a health initiative with a local First Nations and with the JP Center. I think I sent everybody information on the JP Center and we're well aware of it. And there'll be more coming, I think, to the board at some point and likely to SILGA. We're in the very exploratory stages, but it is a way that we could work at some more sustainability for healthcare in our really rural areas, and in turn, perhaps ease up on some of the pressure on some of the bigger centers. So I think that's basically about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Grenier, you're next on.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see, we'll start with Savinaw. I spoke to the Community Association rep yesterday. There's 3 things that came out of that discussion. The first is on the parks and trails. They're happy to see that there's the emphasis on the early emphasis on the trail network from Kamloops through to Tobiano through to Savinaw. They have 2 initiatives on the trail strategy. One is sort of I'll call it a sidewalk, but it's not in the concept of a concrete sidewalk, but more of a safe place for kids to walk along that frontage road in Savinaw, which would be, in their minds, part of the trail network. And then some of the trails up in the hills, which are very scenic, lots of viewpoints, and they're keen to get on with that. They're keen to have a meeting with that. So I said I would report on it today and see if we can get not just the impetus from Kamloops west, but maybe start at both ends and work towards the middle. So, Jamie, that's some feedback, and I'm happy to help with those meetings. The second is along the waterfront area, there's several ministry right-of-ways. We've talked about it when the ministry has come in, and they would like to start with the right-of-way that is next to the area that we have as the water intake. And they think that area, access to the lake through that ministry environment area at that far east end of Savinaw will help take some pressure off of some of the stuff that's taking place in downtown, I'll call it downtown Savinaw. It gives them an alternative place to go to. So there was that. And then the third thing, you may not be aware that there was so much pressure on the boat launch in Savinaw. They hired 2 people to monitor all the boat launching and parking, and quite an intensive activity throughout the summer. And they were really lamenting the fact that there was no other place for people, and when I say people, Kamloops people, Cherry Creek people, people visiting the area, there was nowhere else that they could that they were aware of that they could go do a boat launch. And so they were putting the pressure on that Savinaw boat launch, so much so that the people that live in Savinaw were saying, gee, we feel like we're being pushed out of our own park area on the weekends. And so their proposed solution to that is to work with the city, or propose that we work with the city at the Tranquille area or at the airport area to open up a boat launch so that at least the people of Kamloops could launch their boats into the river and come at Kamloops Lake from the east side as opposed to the far west side, and also relieve on the parking. So those were the 3 things that was on their wish list in terms of recreation and parks and trail. So that's Savinaw. Number 2, you'll see that we got circulated at the break this letter from the Ministry of Transportation, specifically on Tranquille Creek Road. And so working with Mr. Dirkston, we've kind of put a push, and Director Houghton at the end of last year proposed some letters that be written to the Minister of Transportation to increase funding for rural gravel roads, and specifically this road. And I bring your attention to the last line, where this is the local ministry staff, and they say the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, in partnership with Argo Road Maintenance, remains committed to improving conditions on Tranquille Creek Road as funding and priorities allow. And I think here we have the local area folks recognizing specific works that have to be done on this project. We have the letters out there, and I would really hope that we might be in the budgeting session that the province is about to go through with MLA Dirkston and with our own advocacy people, really push the pedal on the idea of increasing funding for rural gravel roads. And I think here it is, the local guy saying, yeah, we're ready to do stuff if we have the funding. And we really have to appeal to the minister to get that funding. So I just put it out there that if I know we have our priorities as to advocacy, but this is an opportune time in this budgeting session to push for that increase. And I think it was $3.5 million up from $1.5 million. And we know, sitting here with Minister Anderson on Sunday, that money is scarce. She didn't show up with a bucket of money. But if we can lean on the minister at least to increase rural gravel roads, that'll help out all of our roads in the TNRD. So that was number 2. Number 3, fire protection in the Logan Lake area, but for Area J residents. There's the Tranquille, or the Tonquin Lake Road up to the Vision Quest facility. There's an opportunity about Logan Lake extending fire protection if the people want it up that roadway. And there's also heading to the east along Meadow Creek Road, there's a couple of people that are actually already paying privately for protection from, for fire protection from Logan Lake. So there's going to be a public meeting February 18th, I think it is, the evening of February 18th, where we're going to propose that to those people to get the feedback from all of the local areas, whether this is something that they would like or not, obviously with costing that goes with that. We have a Tobiano Fire Hall. Of course, the referendum failed with Cherry Creek Tobiano. Tobiano residents are wanting to see a fire hall built. Our staff have been in discussions with the developer. I don't want to go too far down the road until it's public information, but they've been talking about sites and how we might equip those sites. And I'm very much looking forward to advancing that at the appropriate time so that we can give them a fire hall that they've been waiting patiently for. Then we have, I don't know if there's any update on Frederick across the lake, where IHA has said, don't drink the water, but we're not going to be doing anything until the spring. I don't know, staff, if there's any update from your perspective. It seems like it's, yes, we have no bananas.
Yeah, I quickly address that. We have no formal update. However, we have been in communication with IH, reminding them that they need to provide some clarity, and they've indicated to us that they're hoping to do that sooner rather than later. That's the best information we've got so far.
Okay, thank you. And then the last, the Savino water treatment plant application. I had a conversation with Jamie a few days ago, and we're hoping that that might raise its head in April. So that's kind of the timing that we might hear some feedback on. I don't know if you have any comments on anything I've said. That's it. Thank you.
Director. Next on the list is Mr. Houghton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Few things. I had a meeting, I was asked to come on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture to the Westwold Community Association late last year, and regarding working on the Salmon River watershed from basically the point of where it starts up in Douglas Lake Ranch, trying to control the flow of water so that it is kept back in the spring or different times of the year, even during atmospheric rivers. So we don't have the gush of water through Westwold and down into Falkland that we have in the spring, and then we have drought in the fall. And nice to hear that the BC Cattlemen's Association, Kevin Boone, was there, and they have worked with some engineers in the ministry to work on some ideas of controlling the water up in the Douglas Lake watershed, and also having it so that the aquifer, because there's a big argument, you know, when water goes underground like it does through Westwold and down to Falkland and then appears again, like what's under that water table, and you know, how long can I irrigate in the fall and all that. There was pressure this fall on shutting down the irrigation, which, you know, we were into September, I believe, so it's not too bad. Sounds like they're working more collectively, wherever that word is, between the landowners and the ministry than they were in the past. So they're talking about putting a higher dam on Boline Lake, which is in Falkland, to try and store some of this water and to make it work for everybody. I don't know, Director Karpiak tomorrow will be here, and he's on that watershed committee, but that's what I found out there, which was good news. The other item was I attended the first Christmas party in our new Monty Creek Fire Hall. I was asked to attend in December, and it was sure a nice feeling of seeing both communities of Pritchard and Monty Creek come together like they do, like they always do, and had this beautiful Christmas party and dinner, and it was a full house, and nice to see that fire hall. In fact, Brian Hay was there into the dark with his machine, tidying up the ground so that we'd have a beautiful level parking lot for all us guys to go parky. As we were going in to have supper, he was loading his skid steer up to go home, and he placed some beautiful rocks around there, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And we have more work to do in the spring, I think, to get her tidied up to a finished look, but it's a long ways from where it started, and something to be proud of. And I know the communities work well together on that. And yeah, that's as far as the gravel roads go. I had a talk with the ministry similar to Director Grindy. And in my area, there was only funding for 2 roads. I believe it was Robbins Range Road and Barnhart Vale and Weir Road just out in Knutsford that they were able to gravel this fall because of budget constraints and everything. And I know the Rose Hill Road above me, which is kind of funny. It's kind of, when you come up from Valley View, up from the fire hall, or you come in from the Knutsford end, you're in and out of, whether it's be the city of Kamloops, and we talked about that in our weeds part of it here earlier, but you go from city to TNRD to city to TNRD, and I know there's portions there because there's getting to be more residents up there, and I've been getting the feedback we'd sure like to have our road graveled more, but yeah, so I hope that we can find some funds, or this letter that we're writing, at least get them eyes open that we need more attention on the rural roads. Because quite honestly, since Todd Stone was our highways minister, these rural roads in this community have gone nothing but downhill. I know Todd paved the Long Lake Road when he was minister, plus the Barnhart Vale Road. And I don't know of a road in the TNRD that's got paved since on a rural road. So they have lots of work to do and catch up. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Mary M's turn. Just through to Doug. I've heard that Nicola Ranch and the Lower Nicola Indian Band are working on upgrading the one dam that they used at what's it called? The lake on the way down to Merritt. Can't think of the name right now. That's the first time they've partnered. They had 3 other dams on small lakes. The government took away they used to look after any of the possible damage if the dam broke. They now made it the responsibility of the ranchers. If they have an irrigation dam, they're responsible for the insurance. And so this is actually good news one that the natives and the Nicola Ranch are working on replacing one. And it does make a difference. Nicola Ranch had storage on those lakes for years, but they couldn't afford to carry the insurance for the possible damage. So I don't know if you have a reserve that works in your area that you can partner with or not for dams. Ah, well, you don't need a dam then. The other interesting thing is Herb and I had a meeting with our Nicola Lake group that is formed to look after dealing with the algae problem on Nicola Lake. I'm quite impressed with the group that has come together. They have the signage ready to be put up, and they work with Ministry of Health on when the blooms are to be announced. And they have, I think they told me they have 10 signs going up, and the local highways is going to be putting the signs up for them. Their project this year, they're getting into water quality testing, and they're working quite well. The Upper Nicola Band, the council there, as well as the society are working together, sharing information, and looking to see what they need to do next to start addressing all of the elements or chemicals that are running into the lake. It's been 150 years to create the problem, and I think it'll take about 150 years to get rid of the problem because it's so entrenched to the lake. But it is good to see a society. You always wonder when you put something like whether it's going to work or not, and this is working very well. Quite happy to see that, and that's all I know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to speak a little on the Guardians of the Nicola Watershed Society as well. We did have that meeting, and there's a lot of public concerns about the increased input into the lake. And about the best thing that came out of that was, as a really good start, they have shut down some of the camping sites right closest to the water and removed the septic tanks that they think are causing most of the problem.
Next on the list is Director Hayward.
Howard?
Hayward. Oh, I got Hayward.
I've never been called Howard.
Oh, well, congratulations.
I know I'm old, but I think I'm still female. Okay, I've got all kinds of stuff. It's all over the map, but I made myself some notes so I don't screw up here. So number one, we're still pushing for a safer highway on Highway 5 going up through Area O and Barrier. And probably 2 weeks ago, that little yellow bridge that goes over Lewis Creek by the antique store, we had a tractor trailer and 2 cars with a big smash up there. Nobody died. It's amazing. The bang you could hear all the way up Agate Bay Road. But I don't know what happened. I've never heard anything different, but people survived anyway. So we're still working on that. We have elk in Lewis Creek on our ranch. Don't tell anybody. I didn't put them there. They came on their own. So we've got a couple of elk up there, which is quite interesting. And I worked on a number of residents in the area as far as being proactive for their community, getting people together, getting to know who's there, who's not. This is kind of overflown into fire smart, being careful about fire smarting your properties and so on and so forth. But it's kind of carried on and been quite good. People know who their neighbors are now, which is kind of exciting. And a number of residents have spent a lot of time working on their properties, which is really good. This summer, Lewis Creek dried up, not Lewis Creek, Tucker Creek dried up, which goes through the back of my ranch and crosses under the highway at Exloo. And we have been there 35 years, and that creek has been there since the original pioneer of 1944, and it had never dried up before. I don't know if it's running now. I haven't marched up the hill, but I doubt it. So that is interesting. That's changing wildlife corridors where animals are going. And technically what's happening is they're crossing the highway and getting hit on the road, which is a shame. On top of that, although Lewis Creek was low this year, Simp had their highest coho return. It was huge. The odor in Lewis Creek was gross with all the dead coho on, just they die once they spawned. And we've been there, as I say, 40 years, and it was amazing, the amount of, so how did that happen? I guess it happened because Simpas got such a good program with their hatcheries and things, but with the low water thing, who knew? Where's my other note here? So kind of along that nature end of things is I've been working on a memorial plaque to go up above Lewis Creek. There used to be a pioneer graveyard in Lower Lewis Creek, but it was right where the industrial park is. So those graves were removed and taken to Barrier, but nobody ever left a marker. Nobody really knows who was buried there. So we're working on just basically putting maybe a bench and a marker up on the hillside, kind of above the Eco Depot, that just recognizes the pioneers that opened up the valley. We're also working on creating a walking trail at the back of Lewis Creek. behind the Eco Depot. Jamie's working on that with us, and I think that's going to be really nice. Lots of people hike up there. This way we'll know they're hiking safely and we know where they're going and what they're doing. I'm part of a constructive land study and support for healthy and clean water, which safer for more residents in the area. And the TNC Collaborative and Simp First Nation are working on a badger study on wildlife corridors within Area O area and barrier to preserve wildlife habitat, especially because they cross the highway so much. With creeks and things drying up now, they're crossing the highway to go and drink out of the river, but they're getting killed. So they're doing a study on our property with badgers, actually. They're catching the badgers and putting a little harness on them and then turning them loose to see where they go and what they do. And then after 3 weeks, the harness falls off and they go pick it up. So it's been quite interesting, but it's amazing how the animals, the coyotes, the badgers, the deer, all follow the same crossing to go across the highway. So the idea is eventually if they can dedicate where those places are to put some kind of a something under the highway, just a culvert or something for the smaller animals to go through and not be killed on the road and not cause accidents. And aside from all that wildlife stuff, I'm really, really proud about the great volunteers that we have with our volunteer fire brigades up in Barrier Lakes Road. We've got 2 great fire departments up there, or fire brigades up there, and they've saved a lot of land when we've been hit with lightning strikes and all those kind of things. So it's lots of positives. I'm happy. So there you go. That's my report.
And now we get to Lee Morris.
I should reintroduce myself, I think. Mine comments will be fairly brief. Dougie's spoken about the fire hall, and that was a great event there, and it's certainly both sides of the river. When you talk, we're really working on getting the support from my side of the river to talk it up a little bit more. But the investment in that project, in particular, in coordination, obviously with you, Doug, is great. And it was really nice to see an event happening that drew people from both sides of the river. And I'm glad to see that is kind of what's moving forward. My theme for the day is unfinished life, because we've hit January and I have not achieved that which I wanted to in this term. So I've got a lot of projects that are now part of my unfinished life scheme. Terry Hadwin would be proud of me of using that analogy. We've got a lot of issues yet to be resolved within TNRD Area P. Obviously, the complexity of the Adams and the Pinnetan bench and our Pritchard Crown lands issues still not resolved. Clearly, I have an awful lot of engagement that needs to happen over the course of the next few months till I think we get cut off and we're not allowed to actually do any more advocacy. I'm not really sure where those timelines are, but that is clearly my goal on that one. Where we're running into, again, the similar project problems are cabin owners and their access in terms of the water, for example, in the Adams, clearly constantly still getting these complaints around the Crown Lands dumping. Literally on Sunday, I have a project where I volunteer my time to feed the homeless, and every Sunday. And sure enough, there I am standing there, and there's somebody telling me about how terrible it is with all the Crown land and all the dumping and everything. So we've still got a ton of work to do in Area P before next stages occur. One as well, I think on the agenda for tomorrow is when we have the search and rescue presentation. And I've been fortunate to have been engaged in some conversations with them, just more at a personal level than anything. So looking forward to seeing that as well. So that's my get her done for today, which would be Dougie's terms. Thanks.
Go ahead, Director Houghton.
Director Morris, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. You've done a lot in your term on your side of the river. I think we all have unfinished projects, but you've had a lot of completions. You've got, a new water system and a wastewater plant that I don't think the residents appreciate the hard work that you and others have done. And the Monty Creek Fire Hall that's serving, parts of Shuswap Road on that side of the river. And I know collectively you're working hard with Jamie and the fire department to infill the spots that aren't covered. So, and the study that we're doing with the Pinnatown, Paul Lake, and to Kamloops on that stretch of the road for a fire hall. So you've accomplished a lot for the area that you have to cover and the different groups of people you have to deal with. You've got about 5 or 6 communities within one, and take some credit. Don't be so hard on yourself. And you've done a lot, and I'm very proud of you as a director.
Thank you. Any other discussion around roundtable? With that, we adjourn the meeting. Oh,
One that Director Morris brought up a good question, maybe to Scott, Mr. Hildebrand. Will we get any reminders on what not to do and what time period with election, like the grants and all that? And thank you.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Sao, there is a policy around that. And if we have questions, we can certainly send it out to the EA directors. I believe it's 3 months prior. I just need to check, but, and then the election process starts, and I know our legislative team has a lot of responsibility and accountability to make sure that that happens, so that they'll be busy with that, but we will share that with you to make sure the committee knows. Yep.
great. Thank you. With that, we adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Good meeting.